Earlier today, the House Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the federal government held its third hearing investigating the Biden administration's censorship of social media platforms. Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry and others delivered blistering testimony on the censorship efforts of the federal government working in concert with big tech. As we continue to learn, the federal government has been weaponized against the people. Well, joining us is a member of the committee, Congressman Thomas Massie. He represents the 4th Congressional District of Kentucky. He joins us by phone. Congressman Massie, thanks so much for joining us here on Washington Watch.
Well, thanks for having me on today. Yeah, we just had the hearing. The more I learn about this censorship industrial complex, which is what we're calling it, the more disturbed I am.
Now, do I have this right that the Democrats on the subcommittee, they wanted to shut it down? They didn't like what they were hearing, and so they tried to shut the hearing down.
Oh, yeah, they tried all sorts of dilatory maneuvers. They tried to strike the testimony of Jeff Landry, the Attorney General, which is sort of ironic. We're doing a First Amendment hearing, and they want to keep some testimony from getting heard or going into the record. So my colleague Mike Johnson pointed out the irony of that. And they were just generally dilatory. They don't seem to want to participate in this. There used to be a time when you could find people on the left, like occasionally the ACLU would, a broken clock's right twice a day. Occasionally they would be right, and sometimes they would be right on the First Amendment, but they're nowhere to be found now.
Now, what did you personally find most striking from the testimony in today's hearing?
Oh, the breadth and the depth. And by the way, most of the information we know about because of this hearing came out through depositions of individuals, FBI, CDC, in this court case that Louisiana and Missouri have taken up against the federal government. The thing that I found disturbing, Tony, in the last week, I found out I was a target and my constituents were a target of something called the Virility Project. It's a consortium of academia and 501c3s that works hand in glove with the government to target. They monitor millions of social media posts and identify trends and things that need to be targeted. Twice they mentioned me in their internal documents as when I talked about natural immunity and whether or not you really needed a vaccine if you had already had the virus. And I quoted actual research. And they said it was problematic, whether it was true or not. They said it was problematic and that it needed to be addressed. And this was the Virility Project that they're calling it. They're trying to keep things from going viral. And the problem there is not that my voice was squelched. When they shut down my tweets on natural immunity, they disabled my ability to view the comments from my constituents. And that is First Amendment. The First Amendment talks about your freedom of religion, your freedom of speech, but also the freedom to address your grievances, to redress your government.
Yes. And the connection here with the First Amendment social media platforms is that the government was pushing for this. They were colluding. And I want to go back because we really shouldn't be surprised. We should listen to what this administration is saying, because I want to go back to July 15th, 2021. And this was the then press secretary, Jen Psaki, talking about working with social media to address these posts as it pertained to COVID. Play clip 14.
In terms of actions, Alex, that we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation.
There it is, right there.
Yeah, they had a back door into the censorship at these social media companies. They called it partnership portals, where they could submit spreadsheets, the government, I'm talking about the White House, through the Surgeon General, through the CDC, through NIAID. They could submit lists of things that they wanted banned. And there was even one case where Facebook pushed back and said, this doesn't meet our policy. It's actually true and it doesn't violate our policy. But we're going to go ahead and deboost the Tucker Carlson program that went viral. They agreed to do that, even though they acknowledged it wasn't enforcing their own policies. It was doing something because the government would also go to them, the White House, and threaten to push legislation that would make them less competitive or take away their business model. So there were threats, there were offers of things, and that's when you have that sort of power over the media, it feels like East Germany or something.
Right. I mean, Congressman Massie, that has to be a violation of the First Amendment. You have the federal government working with a third party to silence not only elected officials, but citizens of this country.
To silence citizens, elected officials, the media, and they were so integrated. They had dozens of FBI agents assigned to this. The social media companies had dozens of people assigned to it. You've got this consortium, though, also on the outside that was working on this. And when the government is working that tightly, basically the social media companies become agents of the government.
Right.
And that, if the government hires somebody to carry out something that is unconstitutional, then it's unconstitutional. It's true that the Constitution doesn't bear on private organizations, but if those private organizations were working for the government or being forced by the government, as they were in these cases of censorship, that is a clear violation of the First Amendment.
That's the nexus. That's it right there. So, given that understanding, this testimony that's come out, which is based upon depositions in these lawsuits, and most of it surrounding COVID, but I think it goes even broader than that, what can be done?
A great question, because we talked about that too. By the way, the depositions are just of government officials. We need to open the can of worms at Facebook. Twitter has already, voluntarily through Elon Musk told us what's going on. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we have the power of the purse. We need to defund these programs. There's also some discussion of creating a private right of action, cause of action, where somebody can sue the government. You can sue the state if they were to do this to you, like a state, but you can't sue the government right now. The threshold's too hard. And also to fire these individuals. I mean, that's the least we could do, is to set up some system where if you violate the First Amendment rights of somebody and you're a government official, you get fired. So there were a lot of ideas for laws that need to be changed or put into place to prevent this from happening.
Congressman Massie, we're almost out of time, but we're coming up to this debate over the debt ceiling. Is this one of the issues that may factor into that? You mentioned the purse strings.
Well, I would like to use the debt ceiling to strengthen our position on the appropriations process, either through budget caps as a condition of raising the debt ceiling, or making Joe Biden and the Senate promise they won't shut the government down if we don't come to an agreement. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but I would say if we don't come to an agreement, let's fund the government at 95% of current levels. That way, when Joe Biden and the Senate try to be dilatory when we're trying to cut some of this stuff, we have a backstop that isn't shutting down the government, funding everything at 95%.
I think that's a very prudent approach. I really do. Congressman Thomas Massie, great to talk to you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today.